Good Saturday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for January the 14th. We are concluding today, finishing up with the first couple of weeks of readings, and I hope that you have seen benefit in the readings that we've been doing together so far this year as we're working our way through the story of Genesis, and not just through Genesis, but through all of the historical writings of the Old Testament, Genesis through Esther. Again, thanks so much for tuning in today. Let me go ahead and get the text of consideration for today up on the screen, which is going to be Genesis chapter 19, the pretty well-known story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the details concerning it. Reading here together in Genesis chapter 19 in verse number 1. Remember, it mentions the two angels, and we can trace that back to the previous chapter where Yahweh comes in some sort of human manifestation to Abraham and speaks to him once again concerning his son that would be given to him through Sarah, that it would happen in about a year's time. There's the interaction there between Yahweh and the two men who are with him, who are identified here explicitly as angels. And then there's the discussion between Abraham and Yahweh as the two angels have gone on concerning what's going to happen with Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, here is the rest of the story. Genesis chapter 19, verse number 1. The two angels entered Sodom in the evening as Lot, and inserting here as Lot, the nephew of Abraham, was sitting in Sodom's gateway. When Lot saw them, he got up to meet them. He bowed with his face to the ground and said, "My lords, turn aside to your servant's house, wash your feet, and spend the night. Then you can get up early and go on your way." "No," they said, "we would rather spend the night in the square." But he urged them so strongly that they followed him and went into his house. He prepared a feast and baked unleavened bread for them, and they ate. Before they went to bed, the men of the city of Sodom, both young and old, the whole population, surrounded the house. They called out to Lot and said, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Send them out so that we can have sex with them." Lot went out to them at the entrance and shut the door behind him. He said, "Don't do this evil, my brothers. Look, I've got two daughters who haven't been intimate with a man. I'll bring them out to you, and you can do whatever you want to them. However, don't do anything to these men, because they have come under the protection of my roof." "Get out of the way," they said, adding, "This one came here as an alien, but he's acting like a judge. Now we'll do more harm to you than to them." They put pressure on Lot and came up to break down the door. But the angels reached out, brought Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. They struck the men who were at the entrance of the house, both young and old, with blindness, so they were unable to find the entrance. Then the angels said to Lot, "Do you have anyone else here? A son-in-law, your sons and daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of this place, for we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against his people is so great before the Lord that the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who were going to marry his daughters. "Get up," he said, "get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. At daybreak, the angels urged Lot on, "Get up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he hesitated. And because of the Lord's compassion for him, the men grabbed his hand and his wife's hand and the hands of his two daughters. They brought him out and left him outside the city. As soon as the angels got them outside, one of them said, "Run for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere on the plain. Run to the mountains, or you will be swept away." But Lot said to them, "No, my lords, please. Your servant has indeed found favor with you, and you have shown me great kindness by saving my life. But I can't run to the mountains. The disaster will overtake me, and I will die. Look, this town is close enough for me to flee to. It is a small place. Please let me run to it. It's only a small place, isn't it? So that I can survive." And he said, "All right, I'll grant you your request about this matter too, and will not destroy the town you mentioned. Hurry up, run to it, for I cannot do anything until you get there." Therefore, the name of the city is Zoar. The sun had risen over the land when Lot reached Zoar. Then out of the sky, the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah burning sulfur from the Lord. So we have here then the sky or out of the sky, Yahweh rained on Sodom and Gomorrah, burning sulfur from Yahweh. He demolished these cities, the entire plain, all the inhabitants of the city, and whatever grew on the ground. But Lot's wife looked back and became a pillar of salt. Early in the morning, Abraham went out to the place where he had stood before Yahweh. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and all the land of the plain, and he saw the smoke. He saw that smoke was going up from the land like the smoke of a furnace. So it was when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham and brought out of the middle of the upheaval, he remembered Abraham and brought Lot out of the middle of the upheaval when he demolished the cities where Lot had lived. Verse 30, Lot departed from Zoar and lived in the mountains along with his two daughters, because he was afraid to live in Zoar. Instead, he and his two daughters lived in a cave. Then the firstborn said to the younger, "Our father is old. There is no man in the land to sleep with us, as is the custom of all the land. Come, let's get our father to drink wine, so that we can sleep with him and preserve our father's line." So they got their father to drink wine that night, and the firstborn came and slept with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she got up. The next day, the firstborn said to the younger, "Look, I slept with my father last night. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight, so you can go sleep with him, and we can preserve our father's line." That night, they again got their father to drink wine, and the younger went and slept with him. He did not know when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The firstborn gave birth to a son and named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger also gave birth to a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites of today. And that concludes Genesis chapter 19. Unfortunately, a chapter is full of a lot of bad stuff. But we've been working our way towards this, haven't we? We've been working our way towards this. We remember as we looked at the story of Lot and Abraham going their separate ways from earlier within the text, that originally whenever Lot and Abraham went their separate ways, Abraham gave them the choice: you can go this way and I'll go that way. If you go that way, I'll go this way. And Lot decided to take the land that looked most fertile, looked most promising, which was toward Sodom. That's the beginning of that's the beginning of the separation in chapter 13. Well, by the time we get to chapter 14, we read that he was living in Sodom. Well, now that we get here to chapter 19, we see that not only is Lot living in Sodom, but he's actually kind of an important person in Sodom. He's one of those who is sitting in the gateway of the city. This was the place where important matters were judged. This is where the people of influence would have spent their days. That's where Lot is. So he's gone from being toward Sodom to being in Sodom to being an entrenched person within Sodom at this time. Well, he sees them walk in, and he, like Abraham in the previous chapter, extends to these two strangers a great hospitality, imploring them to not go stay in the marketplace in the city square, which is where they said they were going to stay. And I wonder at this point if this is just kind of the role he's assumed, that he's going to know. I don't believe he knows at this time the identity of these men at all, but he knows the character of the Sodomites, and he knows that's not good. Therefore, he implores them to come, and he offers them, in a sense, a bit of protection against those who lived within Sodom. He feeds them with unleavened bread. He prepares the feast, it says. So they ate. They're getting ready to go to bed. And unfortunately, as they're preparing to go to bed, their house is surrounded. And we have all the males within the city who are coming and who are expressing their desires, their unholy, unnatural, sinful desires for these two men. They implore Lot to send them out so that they can have their way with them. And yet Lot speaks against that. He says, "No, we're not going to do this." And it seems at this point, this is what the Lord was talking about back in chapter 18, verses 20 and 21, about the immense cry that had been sent out from the city and that had come to the ears of God. Lot shows courage in this moment, in the fact that he steps out outside the house and speaks to them. And I think we see a bit here. We see a few things. Number one, we see just how important the show of hospitality was, that Lot was willing to give his daughters away to allow them to be abused in order to protect the visitors. Now, of course, here in a little bit, beginning in verse 30, this is going to be reversed, where Lot at this point is going to take advantage of the daughters. Now they're going to end up taking advantage of him. We'll see that here in just a few moments. But again, this is such an entrenched practice, hospitality was, within the ancient Near Eastern culture, that he would rather give up his daughters than give up his guest. He felt a sense of duty and a sense to protect those who were under his roof. Therefore, he goes to this great extent. Well, the men of Sodom are not appreciating that very much, so they are going to say, he came here as an alien, as a new person. Now he's going to act like he's a leader and a judge of this city. So they're going to take him down. You think we can't have the men? Well, we're going to take advantage of you instead. So they begin to put pressure on the door, but the angels reached out. They grabbed Lot, pulled him back into the house, and they shut the door. And then they strike the men in the city with blindness. This seems to be not what we might think of blindness, just not being able to see, because if that's the case, then why not just feel around the house and feel the door and go in? But instead, this would have been a complete disorientation of them. It's almost as they're drunk and just completely unable to feel their way around it and come to their senses concerning where they are. So at this time, they're safe. And the angel said to Lot, whoever you've got here, you got to get them out, whether it's sons-in-law, sons, daughters, wife, whoever, you got to get them out. Get them out of this place where we were about to destroy the city, because here's the direct tie-in to chapter 18 and verses 20 and 21, because the outcry against his people is so great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So he sends out to the way they're termed is sons-in-law, although again, that's kind of weird in this culture. They would be considered that anyways, even though they weren't yet married. It says explicitly that they were going to marry his daughters. But those two individuals, those two men, like Sarah, did not take what is said seriously. They laughed it off, just as Sarah laughed off what Yahweh said in chapter 18 and verse 12. So they don't seem to go along with Lot. They are going to be caught up in the destruction. Verse 15, whenever daybreak comes, they urge him, you got to go. It's time to get out of here. But Lot hesitated. He hesitated here in this moment. It doesn't seem as if he hesitated originally whenever the Lord told Abraham to go. Lot went straight ahead with Abraham. But now he's hesitating. He seems to be, his character seems to be tarnished now from his time spent in this city. But because of the Lord's compassion for him, because on his compassion, he grabbed him and took him out. The Lord's compassion upon Lot was he wanted to separate him as much as he could from wickedness. So he's going to grab him, take him out of the city, and get rid of him. In the following verses, they're given 4 very explicit commands. Number 1, run. Number 2, don't look back. Number 3, don't stop. Number 4, run to the mountains. That's what they had to do. If they wanted to live, they wanted to escape, they needed to do these things. But Lot, again, continues to hesitate, continues to bargain with them and argue with them. Well, we can't go all the way to the mountains. Just let us go to this town. And at that point, the town would have been known as Bela, but the name is going to be changed to Zoar, which is a word for small. And of course, that's what Lot says here. Let me go to this small town. And the angel grants him to be able to do that thing. Once they've arrived there, the sun had risen over the land when Lot had reached Zoar. Then out of the sky, the Lord, notice the word that's used here, rained on Sodom and Gomorrah, burning sulfur from the Lord. So we have here within this text 2 times where the word Lord is used, and this is the small lowercase, or excuse me, the small uppercase Lord. So this is the tetragrammaton. This is the word Yahweh, the YHWH. This is the name of the Lord, said 2 times in this one sentence. Then out of the sky, Yahweh rained on Sodom and Gomorrah, burning sulfur from Yahweh. So there's no confusion here as to who this rain is from. It is from Yahweh. Rain, though. Why say rained? I think this is an intentional callback to what we see in Genesis chapter 6, 7, and 8 with the flood that was going to come upon the whole world at that time, the punishment for the whole world's sin. Now we're going to see the exact same destruction, but on a smaller scale against this city that had been completely overcome by sin. Certainly there was not 10 individuals within the city that God would spare it for. Therefore, it's going to be destroyed. He demolished Yahweh demolished the cities, the entire plain, everything, the inhabitants, whatever grew on the ground. Just there was complete destruction in the flood. There's complete destruction here. But unfortunately, verse number 6, Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. She longed for the city. We don't know if she might have been from Sodom. We haven't heard of her at all until this point. So maybe she was from there. So in that case, she might no longer have been in Sodom, but her heart still belonged to Sodom. Her heart was still in Sodom. She was of Sodom. Therefore, she was destroyed as well. We see at the end in verse 29 that the whole reason the Lord saved Lot was on behalf of Abraham, that he spared Lot for Abraham's sake. And yet, unfortunately, having spared them, him and his 2 daughters who are left now, well, they're not exactly in a good place. Remember how wealthy Lot was described earlier in the text? He had so much stuff, so many possessions, so much wealth accumulated, but now he's got nothing. He has nothing at all. He's only has himself, his 2 daughters. They end up going and living in a cave. They go from much to nothing, so much so nothing that the daughters are fearful that the lineage of the father is not going to be continued. And that was a big deal. Having your lineage continued was a massive deal for people of this time. And so they think, well, what are we going to do? We cannot procreate through any of the men around, because obviously they don't want us. That's not something they care about. And they also see the destruction that just came upon everyone. So what do? Well, these individuals who at this point are corrupt. I mean, they are capital corrupt, capitally corrupted. They say, well, we'll just get our father drunk. Again, calling back to post the flood with Noah. We're going to get our father drunk, and we will be the ones he will be the one through whom we will procreate. And again, that is a reversal of what we saw earlier. Earlier, Lot was going to abuse his daughters. Well, now they're going to abuse him. So everything comes full circle. They do that over the next 2 days. They both became pregnant, verse 36. And in verse 37, we're told who it is. We're told that from this is going to come Moab, who are the Moabites, and through the younger would come the Ammonites, whose father would be named Ben-Ami. And this is just a horrible chapter. I mean, if I'm just being honest with you, it's just a whole bunch of mess here within this chapter. And here's the incredible thing. The incredible thing is this. You might be wondering why. Why exactly is this recorded for us? What's the purpose of it? It does not really continue on the story of Abraham and all. I mean, if we did not have chapter 18 and verses 16 through the end of chapter 19, we're not going to miss anything in the story, right? Except we're given a little bit of detail here. Really, verses 36 and 37 to 38, those are historical statements. They just tell where these people came from. And what's so interesting is Moab. Do you remember who was a Moabitess? Ruth. Do you remember who's in the lineage of Jesus? Ruth. So here we have an absolutely horrific situation of the greatest type of sin, the greatest type of perversion, incest, that's going to be punished by death later on under the law of Moses. And yet it is through this evil action that the lineage of Jesus is actually continued. Jesus is going to come through the results of this evil behavior. And that's just incredible to me. That just shows me the sovereignty of God, the power of God, to not allow these horribly wicked decisions to not only deter him, but he's actually going to use these horrible decisions in order to bring about his promises. What an incredible God we serve. That this horrible chapter, everything about this chapter, and everything about the previous verses in chapter 18 that go along with this, that God can even use this to accomplish something good. Wow, that's incredible. But for us, here's just another reminder of we need to not become entrenched with wickedness and evil. We need to create separation between ourselves and that which is wicked and evil, because it will have an influence upon us. It will. We might think that it won't, but eventually it will. And we need to be very, very careful to make sure that we are not putting ourselves in positions where sin can influence us to the point that we begin to even think corruptly, as we've seen within this chapter. That we have a longing even for that which is sinful. We must make separation between us and the wicked influences that are around us. I appreciate so much you tuning into this reading on the Saturday. Hope that you'll join in again tomorrow as we continue reading on Sunday. We'll be reading in Genesis chapter 20, just a little short reading tomorrow here in Genesis chapter 20. I'm excited to get into that with you then. Again, have a great rest of your Saturday, everyone. Thanks for reading along with me. Take care and God bless.